Okay, that's the intro for your Kin 425 lecture today. So um, you'll see that I've posted this massive crossword puzzle review for you. So this is based on the different topics that we covered during the second half of the course. So I'm going to go over the answers for you here. So the first question here is, this gland helps to control body temperature. This would be your hypothalamus. The hypothalamus. Non-across, this metabolite has similar actions as hydrogen ion for causing fatigue. This is a long one. This one is inorganic phosphate. Your 11 across, utilization of this fuel source increases at altitude. This would be carbohydrate. And the reason your carbohydrate utilization increases at altitude is because at altitude you have a lower oxygen uptake. And with carbohydrate, recall that you can get 5 calories of energy for every liter of oxygen you consume, compared to fats that allow you only 4.7. So you get a greater amount of energy if you're consuming carbohydrate for a given amount of oxygen consumed. So you get a greater bang for your buck for that limited oxygen supply that you're getting from altitude. And that's why you have a greater carbohydrate oxidation at altitude. 12 across, acidity of the muscle increases when this ion leaves the muscle during contraction. The correct answer here would be potassium. So potassium leaves the muscle during contraction, and it's a positively charged ion. That leaves the inside of the muscle negative, and your hydrogen ion, which is positively charged, will increase to maintain electrical neutrality within the muscle fiber. So potassium leaving the muscle leads to an increase in hydrogen ion inside the muscle, and that will increase your acidity. The next one, this gas increases blood acidity. The correct answer here is your carbon dioxide. So recall that, I'm just going to write it down here. I'll do it on the flip side here. Carbon dioxide, the main way that it's carried in the blood is by combining with water. That results in H2CO3. Then that would in turn break down to hydrogen ion plus a bicarbonate ion. So when you get an increase in carbon dioxide in the blood, that eventually leads to an increase in hydrogen ions, which causes an increase in acidity. So the correct answer there is carbon dioxide. The next one, 16 across, this expands when someone becomes acclimated to the heat. And the correct answer here is plasma volume. So the amount of fluid that you have in your blood increases, and that helps to increase your sweat rate and leaves you less susceptible to getting fatigued or going through heat exhaustion in the heat. That's plasma volume would be the answer there. Number 19 across, the time required to ascend from a dive depends on the depth and the duration of a dive. So that should be duration. So what happens when you go to when you're diving, especially when you're scuba diving and you're staying underwater for a long period of time, is the pressure of the water causes nitrogen to be pushed into your tissues, and then if you come up too fast, that nitrogen gets released and forms bubbles in your blood, and that can cause blockages in your blood vessels or pain in your joints. And so it's a dangerous situation. To prevent the nitrogen from forming bubbles coming out of your tissues, you have to come up from your dive slowly, and that depends on the duration and the depth of your dive. Okay, 20 across, something dogs do when they are hot. They don't have sweat glands, so instead they end up panting. So pant would be the correct word to put in there. 21 across, this happens to blood vessels in the fingers with cold exposure, and the correct answer here would be vasoconstriction. So you get constriction of your blood vessels, and that drives the blood towards the center of your body. Your body is attempting to keep your vital organs warm, which are in the central part of your body. 27 across, a heat illness characterized by lack of sweating. This would be heat stroke. So in this case, you've lost the capacity to deliver blood with your cardiac output to your muscles and also to the skin surface. So you need to deliver blood to the skin surface in a hot condition to allow yourself to sweat. So in this case, you've probably become too dehydrated to accomplish that, and your blood volumes decrease too much so that your cardiac output can't keep up and can no longer deliver an appropriate blood flow to the skin surface. That is heat stroke, where you've stopped sweating. 29 across, traveling across time zones in this direction will lead to the greatest jet lag. So it's more difficult to travel in the east direction than the west direction. So east belongs here. So east travel requires that you have to get up earlier in the morning than you're used to. So for example, if it is 6 o'clock in the morning in Saskatoon, in Ontario, it is 8 o'clock in the morning. So if you travel east to Ontario and you're getting up at 8 o'clock their time, it feels like it's 6 o'clock in the morning Saskatoon time. So it's more difficult to travel east because you have to wake up earlier in the morning. Let's see here. We're on 30 across, involuntary muscle contractions during cold exposure. This refers to shivering. And then the last one across, the 31 across, this hormone is released a couple of hours before you normally sleep. This would be melatonin. And that makes you sleepy. The downs, generation of ATP in the presence of oxygen. This occurs in the electron transport chain, and it's this really long one, and it refers to oxidative phosphorylation. Oxidative phosphorylation. Low blood glucose levels. This is hypoglycemia. Melatonin causes this to occur in blood vessels, and the correct answer here would be vasodilation. Five down, this gas is used to replace nitrogen to prevent nitrogen narcosis when diving. And the correct answer here would be helium. So this is used in scuba diving tanks to prevent that nitrogen toxicity. 6 down, the body's main strategy for cooling while exercising in a hot environment, and this refers to sweating. So when your sweat evaporates, it causes the skin to become cooler. 7 down, this term is used to describe increased pressure encountered when diving. This would be hypobaria. 8 down, low oxygen levels in the blood. That refers to hypoxemia. 10 down, the phase of the menstrual cycle where estrogen reaches a peak. That would be your follicular phase. And theoretically, that would be the phase where you might see the greatest endurance performance, because it allows greater fat oxidation with that higher estrogen level. This gland receives information from light receptors in the eye and controls circadian rhythm. So this is your 14 down, and this refers to your hypothalamus. Uh, 15 down, transfer of heat from one object to another. This refers to conduction. So 15 down is conduction. Uh, 17 down, this environmental condition impairs sweat evaporation, and this refers to humidity. 18 down, this is the direction of the shift in the hemoglobin saturation curve when one has been in altitude for a couple of weeks. This refers to a rightward shift. So the correct answer here would be just right. You get a shift to the right. That allows for more oxygen to be released, and that is caused by a metabolite that's produced in your red blood cells called 2,3-diphosphoglycerate, or 2,3-DPG. That increases it at altitude and causes more oxygen to be released from your hemoglobin. Let's see here. 22 down, transfer of heat from one object moving past another. This refers to convection. And a good example would be just the wind that moves past your skin surface, causing it to feel colder. So that's convection. 23 down, high levels of this hormone causes increased fat oxidation during exercise. This would be estrogen. So females have a greater fat oxidation during endurance exercise, and this may confer a benefit during very long duration, so ultra endurance exercise. Gives you greater fat oxidation, allows you to spare your glycogen better. 24 down, This is the slang term for the side effect from emboli that might form if you come up too fast from a dive. So this is air bubbles that are formed by nitrogen coming out of tissues if you come up too fast from a dive. And the slang term here is the bends. It's called the bends because it causes a lot of pain, and so people that experience this condition tend to bend over with pain, and that's why it's called the bends. Expansion of lung blank during an ascent from a dive can be fatal if you do not expire enough air during your ascent. So this would refer to lung volume. So if you're at a depth, the pressure from the water will decrease the volume in your lungs. As you ascend, the pressure from the water is decreasing and your lung volume will expand. And so you need to breathe out. You need to exhale air from your lungs if you're scuba diving and you've spent time at a depth. So ascending from your dive, you want to exhale so that your lung volume does not expand to a degree where your lungs actually burst. 26 down, this color of clothing is best to wear during exercise in the heat. The correct answer here is white. So a light colored clothing will reflect the heat. Dark colored clothes tend to absorb the heat and make you hotter. 28 down, this is the abbreviation for a hormone that increases at altitude and stimulates production of red blood cells. The answer here would be EPO, and that stands for erythropoietin, which increases at altitude and causes an increase in your red blood cell production. So that is your entire crossword answer for this review exercise.